I'd like to welcome you and call to order the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Port Orchard City Council. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. To our the approval of our agenda. Mr. Cacciardi, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I need to add an item to the consent agenda tonight, and that would be the excusal of Councilmember Clausen for personal reasons.
Second by Councilmember Chang. And further discussion of adding that to the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been added to item C on the consent agenda to excuse Councilmember Clausen for personal reasons. Any other modifications or additions, subtractions?
Mayor, I'd move to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the amended agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Before we get to our citizens' comment period, I want to, kind of share my New Year's resolution for this year. So I think this is a very collaborative group. We work well together. I don't think I trade any one of you for a council member anywhere else. So, but I think there's always ways to improve our meetings and our interactions. So I guess my resolution relates to self-improvement. So I've developed a few guidelines for how I'm going to try to make these council meetings work better. And so Mr. Dorsey's not here. This is Thomas Hunter filling in for Mark Dorsey here this evening. But a reminder to myself and to staff is we're here to serve the council and to facilitate a productive and effective council meeting. The city council is the final authority on policy matters. And as challenging it was for me my first year, I've doing better, holding my tongue. I'm still working on Mr. Dorsey. Neither one of us is the 8th council member. You are the council members. So, all council members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. And to ensure this, I'm going to try to work that no one should speak a second time before everyone gets a voice in things. Councilmember Rosa Pepe speaks a lot at these meetings, so I'm going to try to rein that in a little bit. And courtesy and respect, I think, is required of all of us at all times, and I think we do an exceptional job at that. And I'm going to work also to, as we're working things. Sometimes I jump ahead, but work to process things one time, one action item at a time. And I think we do a pretty good job, but those are my goals for 2019 so that we can have even a more successful year. So with that, we'll move to citizen comments. Jerry, do you have anything you'd like to share this evening?
I seem to be responsive. One of the things that I would sure like to see is I don't always have time to get to the committee meetings, but I think an awful lot's being done in committees, and then you guys have your minds made up when you come to the meetings, and there's very little discussion about what happened, and I would sure like to see some of the pros and cons that were brought up at your committee meetings discussed before it comes to votes, because we don't know what's happened at those meetings, and we don't all have time to attend all of the extra meetings, and then all of a sudden comes up and there's very little discussion on most of them. So you guys have come, I think, with your minds after reading whatever you're presented with, and things get passed and we don't know what's happening. I'll say I've been coming to these meetings probably for 15 years now, if not more, and in the last year and a half, 2 years, I feel like I'm coming and not knowing what's happening at the meetings, because things are being done behind the scenes in other meetings, and then you come and you make your decisions. But I think every committee should have a full report about what happened, not just, oh, well, we did this, and, oh, I can't remember, but I think we talked about that. There should be a presentation of what happened at all of your committee meetings with some details. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And we have a guest here this evening, Chelsea Holst from Puget Sound Energy is here to address the council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll be very brief. For the record, my name is Kelsey Hulse, and I'm your local government affairs coordinator for Puget Sound Energy. And I just wanted to stop by to express our appreciation for the coordination between the city and agencies involved in the recovery and restoration efforts following the December 18th tornado and then the storm that came right behind that. Over the course of that storm, PSC crews restored power to over 320,000 customers, and about 35,000 of those were right here in Kitsap County. 26 crews worked around the clock here in Kitsap on more than 160 individual outages or incidents. We're always proud of the work that our crews do, and this storm was no different as they worked extremely hard to make sure that they would make affected areas safe and get customers restored as quickly as was feasible or possible. We sincerely appreciate the kind words that you shared, Mr. Mayor, in your recent letter to the community. As always, we're proud to partner with all of you, with your staff, and with the city to support our customers here in Port Orchard. If you have any questions about recent storms or anything else PSC related, I hope you won't hesitate to reach out to me anytime. I'll make sure that you all have my contact information once more, and I look forward to reconnecting with each of you individually to talk about plans and priorities for 2019. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
So, any questions for Chelsea? I personally have thanked her and Puget Sound Energy, in my letter, and I did reach out to Chelsea too, because Puget Sound Energy, I felt, really stepped up in this storm event. As she said, worked, multiple nights to restore power to our citizens and our community. And then those dangerous trees that they were in Kitsap County, but in our community, it was $50,000 to remove 4 trees because it involved a crane, and they weren't anywhere near power lines. They were hanging over homes, and Puget Sound Energy didn't have to do that, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
I was going to add a comment since
Yes.
I speak so often.
Yes.
With my other hat, I work for the school district during the day, and I would like to say thank you to PSC because a lot of times we couldn't get our buses through if you all didn't do the incredibly great job you guys do in removing barriers and being responsive. So it is for the city, it is for the community and the county. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're proud to do it.
Others have questions or comments for Chelsea? Okay. Thank you for coming. All right. We are now to our consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Any discussion of the consent agenda items? I know Councilmember Ashby, there's some revised meeting minutes due to attendance.
That's on the next one.
It's on the next one, okay?
Yes.
Those are different meeting minutes then.
Yeah. Good.
All right, so all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The consent agenda is approved. All right, so we're to our business items. The first order of business is the appointment of a mayor pro tem. Any nominations?
Do you want to do?
Councilmember Shank?
I was gonna nominate Beck Ashby. Actually, I nominate Beck Ashby as mayor pro tem. I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Want to discuss that? Do you accept that nomination, Councilmember Ashby? Or?
Well, I have no problem accepting it, except I want to make sure that, I think there may be a couple of conflicts that you and I both have on the same meeting nights.
It could be.
I don't know, but yes, I would be very
Maybe,
proud
yes.
to accept the nomination
You're
for
correct.
mayor
When
pro
it
tem.
relates, there's a couple of AWC events where we're both going to be gone. You're correct. And then it would be,
But I don't always go on the Tuesday nights, so.
and with my new responsibilities
You have
with
to,
AWC, I will need to be there. in the evening before, so that if those situations come up, which I think it's happened before, then the night of the meeting, you've got to appoint somebody on the fly, I guess. So, any other discussion of that? Okay, we have a motion and a second for Councilmember Ashby to be the Mayor Pro Tem for 2019. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, Councilmember Ashby. All right, so we've got item B, adoption of an ordinance approving a part-time public works laborer to a full-time public works laborer. I think Clerk Reinerson is going to tackle this one.
Yeah, so I've been asked by Deb Howard, our HR coordinator, to go ahead and read the staff report. She felt confident that the mayor was fully briefed on this item, as well as the council, majority of the council, if not all. So on December 31st, 2018, the Kitsap Community Resource, which is KCR contract to manage a community service worker program, which is the CSW, for the city terminated. It was determined by the Public Works Engineer Department that it would be more effective, it would be more efficient to move the duties completed by the KCR CSW program under the coordination of the Public Works employee. This can be accomplished by changing the part-time public works laborer position approved in the 2019-2020 biennial budget to a full-time public works laborer position. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the ordinance approving the job description and salary scale, changing the part-time public works laborer position to a full-time public works laborer position in the Public Works Engineering Department.
Can you just refresh everybody's memory from before the holidays? The night we approved the budget, we got information that KCR wanted a significant increase to the community service program. I worked with the court and Public Works and the police department, and we discussed terminating the program. The court was very adamant. I think you got information at a work study that how important the program is. The budget contemplated a new position, a part-time parks position, and what this does is merges that part-time parks position and takes the resources from the community service program, which were more than $40,000. I don't have the exact figure. Makes it a full-time position, but because of the cost of the benefits, it's darn close to revenue neutral by adding the two positions together. It will require a budget amendment coming forward later to clean that up, but that's the long and short of it. That's what we're proposing here. With that,
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance approving the job description and salary scale, changing the part-time public works laborer position to a full-time public works laborer position in the Public Works Engineering Department, thereon as presented.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ashby. One additional comment. We have it's called a memorandum of understanding that I'll be signing based on from this action. We haven't completed our negotiations with Public Works on a new contract, but they're going to allow this position be added outside of those contract negotiations. They see the benefit of it, and the union is allowing us to move forward with this. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussions or questions? Happy to, Councilmember Chang.
Is there someone in the part-time position currently that will be made full-time?
There is somebody that is currently an employee of KCR that is being encouraged to apply because he's currently managing the program, but the community service program, and he works hand in hand with our Public Works Department. So I can't say that he will for certain get this job, but he is highly qualified and has all the skills that we're looking for. So he's being encouraged to apply. The job is currently posted on the city's website, and I believe it closes tomorrow. It's been out for more than a week. Other questions? Okay, we'll be voting on adoption of an ordinance approving moving a part-time public works labor position to a full-time position. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item C is approval of the December 18th City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
And as a reminder, you should have the revised staff, or the revised notes in front of you. We just forgot to check our template on who was actually present at the meeting, so we've adjusted those and provided copies for you.
Okay.
I move we accept the December 18th City Council minutes as amended.
Second.
Councilmember Rosa Pepe seconded. So a motion and a second. Further discussion of those minutes as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And not hearing none, and one abstention from Councilmember Diener, who was absent. So in your packet tonight, I'm going to kind of combine items. I provided you what I found as our accomplishments for 2018 and some goals and priorities I came up with. I've got Noah and I have been working on a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to unveil at the Port Chamber of Commerce meeting on Thursday. So I'm going to give you guys a run at it here for my first stab at it. So if Janine wants to drop the screen, Brandy's going to put it up there, and I'll show you what Chamber of Commerce is going to see, which includes what's in your packet and a little bit more. So it's, as always, Noah does fabulous PowerPoints. Fred doesn't always care for his color choices, but I did.
See them.
I worked with him on color choices on this
I'd love them
particular
if I could see
presentation.
them.
So the opening slide, and then if you want to go to the second. So we came up, so there's, what is it? There's 6 of them there from, public safety and providing services, which I think is our city's primary function, improving our community, rebuilding our infrastructure, maintaining our heritage, which somehow got erased, but remember what came from our retreat, honoring our past, but we don't want to live in it. To leading the leaders, and that's really, presiding over this meeting, some of the other responsibilities that I have, the recent election to the AWC board, to going to PSRC or other regional meetings, and innovation. And I think we're always trying to take advantage of technology and innovation. So all of the things that we have accomplished or our goals somehow tie into these themes. So Brandy, going back to 2016, I want to share there's a comment, what I pride myself in is having a plan, and then we execute those plans. And there's a few things I want to talk about that we did in 2016. That the very first one there, I said we would find a way to obtain that funding for Tremont. And I have to be honest, in October of 26, or maybe in September, I was getting a little nervous that whether or not this was going to be achievable or not. And then we got the TIB award, and I think Mark Darcy and I both almost cried. And so that was a big moment in 2016. Moving, partway down the page, moving to a biennial budget, I think has been, a phenomenal success for us. We only have to do those budget processes every other year. We evaluated the needs of City Hall, and we had what Steve Rice referred to as a rabbit warren going on over there in Public Works and Planning, and which resulted in us purchasing the 720 Prospect property for office space. We consulted with Sitel and came up with a plan to upgrade our IT infrastructure. All total, I think those recommendations total about $100,000, but we're in a much better place from a technology standpoint. We're not cutting edge, but we're definitely, have good backbone and are using the cloud infrastructure and have fairly modern equipment. We completed our comprehensive plan. We were on time, and we were the only city in Kitsap County to do so. And here's in second to the last one is we completed in 2006. We completed the 100% design for the McCormick Village Park.
So, if you go back, you created an ADA transition plan.
Yes, we hired a consultant, and we have an ADA transition plan. And
Was it created or created?
it might have been created. Thank you. That's why I'm doing this here.
Okay. So do you want feedback as we
I
go
do-
through?
that'd be wonderful.
Okay,
Yes,
Then can you go back to the cover slide for a minute? And I'm not nitpicking.
Can you start all over?
Oh, yeah.
No, okay, so no, next one. So some of the things are I'm sorry, going through the meetings with you today, my brain's totally mush, I don't know how you do it. Capitalized, like maintain our history, heritage and history. See, the things are capitalized on the first
Yes.
three, but not like the next two.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, it's little things.
Yep, we created, you're right,
sorry.
we created.
Yeah, I just like,
All right, let's go to 2017.
thank you.
All right,
You're rubbing off
First-
on me back.
the Waterfront Park, we did completed concepts for the Waterfront Park. And through the legislative process, we received an additional $12 million for a total of, $2 million, for a total of $12 million in awards for Tremont. We issued $6 million in bonds, and we awarded contracts and started construction in 2017 of the Tremont project. We became a code city. We hired Noah Crocker. I think that was a good move. And the last item there I think is very important is we went through the abatement process and actually abated a structure through you guys put resources into the budget. We made some amendments to our code that allow us to lien a piece of property, and I think it's actions like that that puts everyone else on notice that has a dilapidated building in our community that we mean business and that we're going to take action to correct those deficiencies. So, Mr. Rose Pepe, do I have any other spelling errors on that?
No,
page?
not on this
On that
one.
that
but-
page was good? Okay,
yeah.
all right. Well, let's go on to 2018, which is this past year. We appointed, I should say, a new judge and hired a new court administrator, and those have both been great additions to our city. Well 13 is 100% designed, and we awarded a drilling contract there just before the end of the year. We have 100% design on the Rockwell Park, and I think here before the end of the month, we could be awarding a contract on that. We'll at least be opening bids. We completed the design for the Anderson Hill Roundabout. Unfortunately, we didn't succeed in the TIB awards on that, but we'll be back. The Bethel and Sedgwick corridor was an exceptional planning exercise because we need to plan for the future and what the future of our community looks like. We got the Opportunity Zones award. We got the only additional award for a census tract in the county, and I'm very proud of that and the work that we did to get that. And we constructed and cut the ribbon on McCormick Village Park Phase 2.
Yeah, I'd almost add that, open, constructed and open.
Yeah, we're kind of in an awkward place right now because
Yeah,
it's
I
really
know.
not open because we've got a punch list with the contractor and there's some safety concerns with the piece of playground equipment until it's corrected.
Okay.
So we've unfortunately kept it. So just a sidebar there, we're going to have to take the whole physically pick the structure up and move it over. It's too one of the pieces of equipment is too close to the retaining wall, and if a child fell off of it, there's an insufficient clear zone. So on to so I've got a page here. These are just some of the ways that I try to reach out to in the community, and some of the things we've done this past year. The Mock City Council meetings, I have a heck of a lot of fun with that at the schools. And I was just with a group of second graders, and I've got a really cool stack of letters from about 90 kids sitting on my credenza. I meant to bring some of them up. They're priceless. Jedi Special Day, that was, I think, touching to all of us. Unfortunately, we don't have good news there. He is back home, but he's not doing well. And I was, one of my highlights this past year was being elected by my peers to the Association of Washington City's Board of Directors. So, as Jay witnessed today, got a sampling of what Super Tuesday's like, and it's an important day, but normally it doesn't happen on the same night as a council meeting, so it's a long day today. So on to 2019, and this is just some of the, if we could hit, so what I'm seeing as priorities, and I welcome your feedback on this. As we developed the budget, we said no new projects, and you can see why. There's a list of 13, we have 13 projects totaling $20 million that we're currently working on, and the larger projects are listed there, and we've got a lot on our plate. And if you haven't driven down Tremont in the last 2 days, there's a second roundabout's partially open. So I meet on Thursday with a consultant to potentially talk about a process for hiring a new police chief and what that looks like, and I'll likely be bringing a contract for your guys' approval in the next month or so. We're implementing new accounting software. They start next month, data entering for, I think it's at least 60 days, doing dual entries on both systems. It's painfully aware of how accounting or software conversions can go wrong from my experience at the Housing Authority. We still don't have financial statements over there, and that's just not a good place to be in. We're going to continue to invest in technology that creates efficiencies. I know we've talked with, we hired AWC's GIS consortium, and there's some improvements we're going to make with that system from their recommendations. You'll be seeing probably some contracts for that. We need to continue to invest in our public infrastructure. I want to continue to work to facilitate a groundbreaking of a mixed-use project downtown. I think we've seen some concepts for that. There's the potential that we could get a corporate campus in our downtown, and I think that's very important to retain a bank that's been in our downtown for 100 years and not lose their corporate campus to another community. To continue to support the construction of new schools in our school districts. Every time the school district has ran a bond, I think this council has been supportive of it. I'm not saying that the answer is a new high school or any school, but I think we need to support the schools and the construction of new facilities in our district, whatever that may be. Activate our waterfront with parks, paths, and public space. Leverage the investment our community has made in high-speed ferries. The voters passed that high-speed ferry measure, and I think it's created opportunity, and I think we need to find ways to leverage that in our development activities. And develop code and long-term plans that are the right fit and vision for our citizens. So what did I miss?
Mayor, you may not have missed it. I may have missed it, but did you talk about the property tax abatement program where we're able to go and redevelop some of this infrastructure in some of our centers? We did, one was built, and that also helps us keep our eyes on affordable housing for our community.
That's what I was wondering, if you wanted to use the word affordable housing or just
Absolutely.
mention it when you
That's the
talk,
reason why.
one or the other.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah.
Affordable. Yeah, I didn't list that would have been an accomplishment last year.
Right.
But, yeah, you're right.
I thought you had that as an accomplishment shown.
For the overlook apartments?
Right.
2017.
Property, no?
16 or 17?
2017.
Yeah, maybe it was 17.
Did we do it
Yeah,
that long ago?
right there, second to last bullet.
Okay.
Right, but
Maybe
yeah, you
highlight
either have
the-
to mention
the
it verbally.
affordable
Yeah,
housing
with the
component.
ground, I talked about the groundbreaking, but I didn't, it was completed.
Just the tool that
Yeah.
helps us
Tie it in.
keep our eye on affordable housing.
Yeah, it was completed, but I do believe affordable housing is a hot button that people are gonna be reading about in the papers, so we should acknowledge what we're doing in that arena.
I don't know if this is a reach or not, and certainly defer to the council and to you. I'm sorry, Jerry, I apologize. Certainly defer to the council and you, but those 4 guiding principles that did come out of our retreat, I don't know if that's worth using as a lead-in or as a wrap-up, because it kind of does give an overview about how we're moving forward with some of the decisions that we make.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Rob, I like the mention of the high-speed ferries, and I would like Port Orchard to be more involved in a potential contingency plan. For example, last year, the Bremerton Ferry Terminal was not available, and we had a ferry from Seattle that was literally sitting in Sinclair Inlet before it could dock there. There was talk that it was going to go to Southworth, and they canceled the fast ferries, and it would have been ideal if the fast ferries could have been diverted to Port Orchard, and then they could bus them from Port Orchard to Bremerton. So if we can somehow get a seat at the table and encourage them to.
The challenge with that, I know firsthand, is that.
The ramps.
Yeah, it's the foot, the height of the high-speed ferries is different than the dock we have. And there's only so many, and all 3 of the boats that we have, and including the new Waterman, is a different height too. And so they can only have so many ramps. Well, they'll tie up the Melissa Ann, or the Finest wouldn't even fit down here. It's so large, but there's just no way to offload passengers off of it. Our facilities aren't equipped to do that here in Port Orchard anyway.
Maybe the port can help with the temporary ramp, because they did have one for the Melissa Ann on a temporary basis.
Yeah, and the Melissa
And-
Ann can be, I know that was one of the things that we approved today, was some temporary staff positions, so that, because the reason we couldn't use the Melissa Ann when the Carlisle was down.
The crew?
Is that we didn't have, because the contractor's crew can't operate that boat. And we didn't have any additional crew, so we have some on-call positions now so that we could ramp up a crew in an emergency situation. And the Melissa Ann, which is a leased boat, is different than the RP's class boats and the Finest, which is a much larger vessel. But I hear what you're saying. But we have facility challenges down there with the dock, and that isn't the port's dock. That's Kitsap Transit's dock. Yeah. So, other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So for 2019, I think when you look through the list, you pretty much can understand most of, if not all of what's being shown there. But the very last bullet, develop code and long-term plans, maybe you want to provide a little more specificity about what code we're looking at and what long-term plans we're talking about. And I hope if you break that out a little bit, that we're talking about some sub-area plans.
Yes, and also one of the components we're doing, which is spoke to Councilmember Ashby's comment, was trying to create a broader spectrum of product mix to incent affordable housing. Sure. The duplexes, the triplexes, the townhomes,
Right.
which they're nobody's developing them because. Yeah, that's right. And the ADUs, that's correct.
And to talk about some of the exciting development code that we're on the cusp of adopting.
All right. So, in a similar format, this is what Thursdays.
Can we get a copy of that when you're done polishing
Yes,
it?
yes.
Thank you.
And I've timed out on my computer here, so bear with me for a minute.
It's not going to update again, is it?
I know, it did that to me this morning. Done for updates for the day. All right, we are to item F, which is the appointment of, to the Peninsula Region Transportation Planning Organization Executive Board. And currently, Councilmember Ashby represents the city on that board, and I think she's willing to continue to do so, but it will require council action to, so we would ask that you make a motion to approve her, and then during the discussion of that, I think Councilmember Ashby would like to talk a little bit about whether we should continue, what that looks like and whether we should continue to do that. So I would entertain a motion. Councilmember Luca Rowley?
I move to appoint Beck Ashby, reappoint Beck Ashby to the Peninsula Regional Transportation, it should be Transportation Board, Planning Organization Executive Board.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Kuchardi. Councilmember Ashby, do you want, before we take the vote, you want to just talk about that board a
Yeah,
little bit?
I'll talk about that board a little bit. I have represented Port Orchard on that board for the last 5 years. Port Orchard receives no funding through that particular transportation planning organization. We get all of our funding through PSRC. To give you a little background, there are 4 counties in the Peninsula RPTO. There's Kitsap, Clallam, Jefferson, and Mason. And since they formed the RPTO in 1990, the Olympic region of the Department of Transportation has been what they call their lead agency. They do all the administration, and the DOT let the RPTO know last spring that they were going to discontinue that in the end of June of this year. And so the RPTO has been seeking someone else to do the lead agency work. And I have chaired that selection committee for the RPTO. That's why I very much appreciate you keeping me on, because that keeps coordination for the RPTO. But in doing so, and the deeper I get into it, the group is going to make some bylaw changes, and they are going to make amendments to their interlocal agreement. And I would ask our council to be mindful of what that interlocal agreement looks like coming through, and if we really want to be an active participant. I'm hoping that in this ILA process that there can be a category of membership, like an associate member or something, where we could go and attend, but we don't necessarily vote. I mean, there are some nuances that I think may be important. I believe we will also hear some discussion from PSRC. We are the only county in the state that belongs to 2 different transportation organizations. PSRC, which is where we get all our funding, and then the regional RPTO. There's going to be some conversation about us moving to being in just one. It is beneficial to Kitsap Transit and Kitsap County for some funding opportunities they have through the RPTO. It's just something that I think we're going to want to take a look at moving forward this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice if, as they change their bylaws, if we had the ability to be an associate member
Right.
or something, and I greatly appreciate your involvement and your willingness to attend those meetings, because I know it's virtually an all-day commitment by the time you travel to and from that 2-hour meeting.
Right. Yeah.
Much like any of our, PSRC meetings,
It has been. I have made some wonderful friends, I'm going to say, as well as some very beneficial networking. So it hasn't been It's just, I'm not sure what our role should really be in this organization. Yeah, that's what I think we need to look at is what, and I think the organization needs to look at that too. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table for Councilmember Ashby to continue to represent us on this Regional Transportation Board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Councilmember Ashby. Motion is approved. All right, so our business is done for this evening, and we are to our council committee reports. And just in response to Sherry's comment earlier, we do record all of those committee meetings. So if anybody you or anyone else who ever wants to hear verbatim any of those committee meetings, they all can be found on our website to listen to. So. But we'll try to do a better job of reporting out, too. That's, your point is well taken. So we're on to our committee. Finance, I know, hasn't met, and they don't have a meeting scheduled at this point. Economic and Development and Tourism has not met since December, and they meet next week. Correct. Utilities, have you met?
No, we haven't, and actually, it's listed that January 14th we'd be meeting. It has been canceled by the director.
Yes, I knew that, and it will be, the next meeting will be in February.
February 18th.
February 18th is the next meeting. Sewer Advisory, have you met?
We have met. It was a special meeting. It was for voting on the budget, and then a review, or we got a little tour of the facility.
Okay.
The next meeting is January 16th, 6:30, and it's here at City Hall.
Okay, and I know land use met. You want to give a report?
Yeah, we met on January 7th. It was a relatively quick meeting. Councilmember Beck sat in for Councilmember Sean, who was absent. Fred was there, and planning staff was there, as well as the mayor. We had two discussion items. I'll take the quick one first. There was a gentleman who has property out off of Old Clifton who was hoping that the city would support an area-wide rezone on his behalf, and the city didn't see any real benefit to doing that other than perhaps covering costs. It may be that it is warranted at some point, but I think we all agreed that it was up to the landowner to demonstrate that in terms of changing property from industrial to residential. I think there also may be a question about our industrial land supply and whether that's in the best interests of the city. Staff is going to get a hold of the applicant or potential applicant and let them know of our leaning at this point. And then we talked more about tax abatement zones, and we had some fairly broad discussion. We really didn't dive into the weeds a whole lot, but I think we know what we need to talk about. We need to talk about whether these kinds of programs are going to be appropriate for all of the centers that we have. So, for example, does Fred Meyer need this when Fred Meyer could perhaps present its own opportunities for development? So we also talked about the fire marshal's concerns, the fire chief's concerns, and that some of his concerns about loss of tax opportunity is perhaps warranted, especially when you read his letter of how much area they support. We talked about developing criteria for a tax abatement program and what that would look like, and whether it would be appropriate, in fact, to look at a profit margin that was presented to staff. And then we talked about whether perhaps 8 years ought to be an appropriate tax period for centers, and 12-year ought to be an appropriate period for affordable housing development. So in the end, we agreed we needed to come back to the council and talk about the intent of tax abatement. I think that what we saw in 2016 was good and warranted, but if it's going to be used by anybody to come in and ask for that and to state that their project doesn't pencil, if we don't support that, then our back is going to be up against the wall consistently. And so we don't feel like we ought to jump on that bandwagon right away. So there'll be more discussion about tax abatement zones, and Nick is doing a lot of research into this and perhaps trying to find other areas with models that we could use to modify our own code. Did I miss anything?
I think the one point you might have missed is the on the 12-year abatement, the percentage of median household income and whether or not we need to adjust that for the 12-year abatement period, so that it has a larger benefit for our community, for that 12-year abatement.
Yeah, the point that I think is important is when we did the original tax abatement, we didn't have a full understanding of what our apartments were renting for, what the rental rate was in the area. And what we have found out is most of them already qualify as affordable housing. And so what criteria did we want? And the criteria became, I think, an important piece so that there's true value for our community to do the abatement.
The longer abatement.
The longer
The 12-year
abatement.
abatement, yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Also, you may have read that article that said that there's more housing available in Seattle now than there has been in quite some time, that the market is slowing down, and that, of course, is going to impact us.
Right.
So we probably need to really be very mindful of what's going on with that growth before we get too ambitious about our own and end up having too much housing available. I'm kind of wondering how that's going to go bing, bing, bing all the way back through. So if Seattle's already seeing quite a jump, and I know they're continuing a lot of their building, I don't know that we're going to have that same huge demand that we've been seeing in the last couple of years. So it made me wonder.
Yeah, and I'll just add, because I think you asked, the upside is that there's no downside to really taking a little bit longer look at this and a deeper dive into this. The downside is we could see a developer walk away from a potential project near Fred Meyer's where they had said they needed this. So that's what I believe
think
generally
that's
to be
the
done.
only time sensitivity of this
Yeah.
is this one project, and whether there's a one-off or not, and that's your guys' decision. So it's on the agenda for next Tuesday's work study, and Nick's going to present some formal ideas of the discussions that were presented at the land use meeting. So thanks for your report, Scott. Lodging tax.
One more thing,
Oh,
next
I'm sorry.
meeting is February 4th at DCD at 9:30.
We're hibernating until March.
Okay, that's good to know. And Festival of Chimes and Lights.
We're actually meeting this next Monday at 3:30 here at City Hall.
Okay.
Do it for good of the order.
You certainly, outside agencies, I bet.
Well, I would do outside agencies, but I don't want to.
Okay.
We had on December 30th, this Sunday, the annual You Can Do It marathon and half marathon downtown. And there were, this is just informational, but it was pleasing to me. The event had 432 participants. Only 63 had a Port Orchard address. That's about 15%. And there were 43 from Bremerton, and the rest of the group, was from all over. There were 34 from Tacoma, 33 from Seattle, 26 from Gig Harbor, 4 from Auburn, 4 from Olympia, 6 from Puyallup, 3 from Kirkland. So there's quite a diverse group, and it's an event that happens that brings economic opportunities for our downtown merchants, and we really don't have to do anything. So I just wanted to say that it was a nice event. I know that the city, and particularly the clerk's office, has had some struggles with them in the past, but I believe they have new administration, and I think it's going much better.
It's fabulous to have that many people downtown.
Right. Yeah.
And you should note that Council Member Ashby completed the race.
Wow.
Yes, Councilmember Ashby was third in her age division.
How
And
many
there were more than 3. I did the one in July also, and I was first in my age division. I was also last in my age division because I was the only one. So,
All right, anything else outside? Today was Super Tuesday, and Councilmember Rosa Pepe attended his first transit meeting, and he filled in for Councilmember Ashby at KRCC, where we had our first affordable housing committee meeting. The next one will be in March, tentatively. And, you know, I think what I in particular spoke to at that committee, there are a number of things for affordable housing that are that could be implemented, and I caution that you know, what our community may want may differ from Bainbridge Island or Paulsbo or Bremerton, and that I wouldn't support a one-size-fit-all solution from in that arena. I think there's two things to discuss there. One is affordable housing, and the other piece is subsidized housing, which I think that is the role of our housing authority and Bremerton's housing authority. And the challenge there is neither one of those agencies has a revenue stream to provide those services. And the housing authority that we're part of is not in a position to be doing development anytime soon. And but they could, with a revenue stream, they could be doing something with vouchers, where you're taking you know, somebody's market rate unit and subsidizing, you know, that housing, you know, with and we've got to find that revenue source and what that means. And I've had some thoughts, but I won't belabor that tonight because that committee needs to go through its process and its work. But that and then the other meaningful meeting today was the health district, and there was a major discussion around the needle exchange program. It's a particular hot button there, and I didn't have a whole lot to say. There's a problem here in our community too with needles, you know, and drug use, and I think in all of our communities. But you know, there's also the without these types of programs, you spread disease. So that's where the health district has a role. So it's a complicated issue, and but on the other hand, you know, the health district is basically providing door-to-door needle exchange service, and that's troubling to me too. And so more to come on that. We got a lot of testimony today on that from the community, mostly in favor of the service, and Bremerton in particular, and Mayor Exon from Paulsbo spoke very strongly and have had a little subcommittee that they're very much opposed to it. And there's a lot of homework to be done, I think, on that issue. I see both sides of it, and it's a complicated issue. So, wish there was an easy answer, but there isn't one. So, on to the mayor's report, and unfortunately, you saw Housing Kids Up in the newspaper again. New Year's Eve, we met with the auditors, and they actually, state auditors, and they issued their audit findings. And based on the information they had at that time, because they haven't re-audited, I sit on the finance committee still for that agency. The information they had at that time had the Housing Authority running out of cash in February or March. We know that we'll make it through June and most likely through all of 2019. We continue to make adjustments, and there were some significant staff reductions earlier in the year that have helped with that. And it was unfortunate that we had to do that, but very necessary. They're committed to supporting the 900 plus households that and housing units that Cows and Kitsap owns, and if we're in subsidized housing. So, I'm sorry to say they were still in the paper. We still don't have financial statements, been promised to us by February 1st, and it's a result of a disastrous software conversion. So we're on to our third system, and the one we converted to just simply didn't work. Processes weren't put in place by staff to map that conversion over properly. So, so nowhere to go but up. Let's see. There were some concerns, and in particular, Councilmember Lucarelli, we wanting to waive some utility late fees for a particular apartment complex. We got some testimony. We got advice through the holidays here from MSRC that they don't believe we have the authority to waive those penalties. And so we've added a business item to next week's council work study so that we can discuss some potential code changes that give us maybe some latitude and some processes, some policies to do that. So we'll talk about that more next week, but I promised Councilmember Lucarelli we'd have it on this evening's agenda, and it was not there.
I saw that it wasn't.
You saw that was not there, so I felt I needed to address that this evening, so there we are. Tremont, my goodness, I drove through it 3 times yesterday. Some of those times were more painful than others. I was in and out of the city for a number of meetings, and where the second roundabout is somewhat open. The detour has 2 fewer turns and 1 less stop sign, so it's progress. The tornado, a lot's happened since we last met. Actually, it was the evening of the tornado we last met. And I hope you saw the letter that I wrote that Kitsap Sun published today, and it was, what can I say about that? I provided all of you a list of the businesses. I gave this to the Department of Commerce yesterday, and they are going to work with the Small Business Administration and visit each and every one of these businesses to make sure that there aren't any unmet needs. And the Bethel Square in particular, talking to Nick and his staff, the damage is a little more extensive as they tore into that. Could be a little longer. A couple of the units aren't really affected, but others are very affected. And we only have 3 residences in the city. There's many more than that in the county. As of yesterday's tornado meeting, we got I actually stole this from the meeting, and it's a list of the 35 households. There aren't any names on this, but that there's active cases that they're managing for it. Only one of these, of the 35, is in the city. And there could be more. We just haven't heard from folks yet.
What street is that on? Do you remember? What was it? Salmonberry?
There's 2 on Ramsey, and there is 1 on Bethel. There were a number of homes damaged in the Indazio development, but they were homes that were under construction. They didn't have people living in them yet. Yeah. Garage doors and siding damage, roofing damage, but they weren't occupied homes. There's a home on Ramsey that is vacant. It's an ongoing code enforcement problem. Unfortunately, it got some more damage, but not all of it. So there's still nobody living in it, but it's going to be a bigger code enforcement issue now. So the neighboring house is a mobile home with some unpermitted additions. I believe they were living in the 5th wheel next to it already. They definitely are now. And then we've got a home that's red tagged next to the nail salon. It's got the roof is tarped, everything. So that first evening, if our inspectors couldn't get in to the structure because there was trees, it automatically got red tagged. Once the trees were removed and they could safely get in the house, then it was either green tagged or yellow tagged. And we still haven't made contact with that particular property owner. And I know they've been out, at least in the first couple of weeks, if not every day, every other day. And so that structure's still red tagged. That could be lifted, once we inspect it. We know that there's roof damage, but beyond that, we don't know what else with that. And then you can see the list is, but back to this list of 35, there are, in this 35, there are 5 families or homes that don't have insurance. And 2 of those are homeowners. And so that's tragic. And having been the victim myself of a large tree on my home, your insurance company pays for the damage. They don't pay for the mess. And that's a big part of this ongoing effort is, the tree removal and the limbs and all the things that blew around. That's not damage. That's, the insurance only pays for the damage to your home or your car. So that's Lowe's has got a big work party on Thursday out there. And Janine, who's the wonder in the back room back there, and master of our webpage, we've got an icon on our webpage, and it's tomorrow morning. It'll say Tornado Recovery Center. You'll click on that. It says something else right now, but we're working on that. And within there has the information for the recovery center, and then we're going to put links for all the different articles and work parties and things and what's coming, so that it's very apparent where to go to and where to get information. It's not affecting a lot of people in our community. Our community is, I guess, bigger than Port Orchard is what I'm trying to say, and I'm just trying to provide information to everyone that we can. That's enough on the tornado. And I just want to plant, no decisions tonight or anything, but just plant. 2020 is the next award cycle for transportation. And so what do we want? Do we want to have a competitive application? I don't know that I think our lesson learned from Tremont is we need to have our own design already done. And so we need to make some decisions later this year, not in the next 30 days. Is that something along Bethel? Are we going to advance designs on the whole corridor? Or are we going to pick an intersection and get to 100% design so we have something to go after transportation awards with? So that's, just want to plant a seed there.
Personally, I think that's a real important seed to plant, because the dollars that will be part of that competition in 2020 will not be obligated until probably, I would think, 23, 24. So you have to think out, quite a ways.
And to be successful, we've got to have a good design and a good plan.
Right.
And, and not a half-baked cake. So, we've got the 100% design for Old Clifton, Anderson Hill Roundabout. We weren't successful on the last go-around at TIB, but that's a perfect TIB project. I don't know that and maybe we strike out in 2019 at TIB, and that becomes our project for the regional bucket. But I would hope that we would have that built long before this money is coming from these federal dollars. So, so it's thinking about where is that next, mega project that we're trying to accomplish. So, okay, that's all I have for the mayor's report. Department heads. Public Works Director Hunter tonight. What do you have for a staff report? Anything to?
Nothing to report.
Okay. And we wouldn't have a finance director or a public or a DCD director, but Sharon, do you have anything to report this
I
evening?
have nothing to report this evening either.
Okay, we have an executive session with a couple of items here to follow. Yep. And Clerk Reinerson? I have nothing either. Okay. And public comment. Jerry, you have anything else? Okay. With that, our meeting is, well, not quite adjourned, because we're gonna go into an executive. I think this 10 minutes is overly optimistic, but we'll start with 10 minutes. And pursuant to litigation, RCW 4230.1101I, and we'll start with 10 minutes.